Good evening. This is Aaron Wells. I am the executive director of North Philly Project, and I want to thank you for hanging out with me on tonight's Wellness Chronicles. Do me a favor, hold on just a second. I am back. Thank you for your patience. I'm a tea drinker, and I'm gonna be hanging out with you for a minute, so I had to make sure I had my my refreshment. Yeah, we do this thing organically here. Glad to meet you. Glad to talk to you. Glad to see you. Hope your today has gone absolutely the way you wanted to. I hope that you have been able to stay away from heat and been as comfortable as you possibly can be. Also, hope that today that you've been safe. COVID still is around somewhere, and hope you are navigating your space as well. Hope that you and your family are well, and that these conversations find you well. I am hanging out solo tonight. These are generally um, panel discussions, but tonight I'm solo, and it's intended because I've got some things I wanted to share with the community that I so love. This is the Wellness Chronicles presented by North Philly Project. I'm Aaron Wells, the executive director, and the Wellness Chronicles are community conversations exploring life in marginalized communities, and we talk about how to ignite sustainable social change. We have these conversations to identify, to explore life in our communities, and for me specifically, North Philadelphia, and then even deeper still, 19132. But the conversations go beyond just the conversations go just beyond um, North Philly, because I'm speaking with a friend today who's down in Atlanta. A reality of it is that in all of our urban areas, it all looks alike. We call things different names, but at the end of the day, we're dealing with all the same stuff. And so um, I want to be able to use this platform um, to be able to make sure that we are having the communication, the conversations that we need to have. All right. So this is Aaron Wells, the Wellness Chronicles, and I am here. I've got information for you. I want to share some things with you. If you come on to the platform, if you would, please make sure that you share this out. Okay, share this with your social media platform, your network, those people that you connect with on social media. Please go to the North Philly Project YouTube channel and subscribe. We're looking for subscribers. I'm trying to get 10,000 subscribers, so I can then go get 10,000 more. We can have 20,000 subscribers. That's my aggressive goal by the end of the year. Hopefully, we'll be able to make that. Hopefully, we'll be able to make that happen. This is the Wellness Chronicles, and we start our conversations tonight with a question I've been asking our panelists. I've been asking people in different conversations, different places that I find myself, both in support and work. And that is, are we as a people defining community in a way that is a true definition of what community is? Are we seeing and identifying? We talk a lot about community, and in our conversations about community, um, many of us have these different views and different ideas and thoughts about community. Um, for me, um, we often look at community in the eyes of through the eyes of nostalgia. Um, This is interesting to me. It's not like that anymore, gang. I grew up in North Philly, born in '59, so I grew up in the '50s. Born in '59, I grew up in the '60s, the '70s, the '80s. I left home at the end of the '70s to go to college, and coming back and being back and forth, we often yearn for how community used to be. I remember how community used to be. I remember when Ridge Avenue was a thriving um, retail district. I remember that. I remember when you could go down Lehigh Avenue and find almost anything that you was looking for. I remember when we had grocery stores, and I remember when we had drugstores, and your doctor was had an office on Lehigh Avenue or Ridge Avenue. I remember those days. I remember when um, Pat's was in North Philly. You know, I remember these things, as many of us do. And so when we look at our community, we have a habit through nostalgia to define community as it used to be. When we got up on Saturday mornings and we cleaned our steps, and we had to do that before, and our sidewalks, before we could watch our cartoons, our favorite cartoons. When we actually, had to come home, do homework, or we ate together at the dinner table, and all of those things that we finally remember. Um, when neighbors had the privilege to discipline somebody else's child before your mom could get to you. All of those things that we from nostalgia remember. That's not who we are anymore. We've evolved and become something that does not look like those things that we remember fondly out of nostalgia. And my question has been to both panelists and to friends: how can we support and serve a community that we've yet to truly define what it looks like? I was in conversation with a good friend the other day, and we were talking about the makeup of family, the construct of family. I've had this conversation with quite a few people over a period of time. What does family look like? And though we may have traditional definitions, we may have definitions based on our religious beliefs, we may have definitions from cultural traditions, but there's another reality. Family has changed. Family has changed, and it doesn't mean that your family has changed. But when we look at family, family is being defined by people who are in those natural support groups, who say that this community, this part of the community, this is my family, or that part of the community, that is my family, not necessarily coming from the same household or having the same lineage or having the same DNA. Maybe the groupings are according to the social gatherings, but people are calling family different things and having different definitions and seeing family a different way. And so I'm saying that community has changed. That which comprises community, family, has changed. And so the question I often ask, and I'll continue to ask: how can we truly support the change of a community if we're not defining it well or understanding it well? If you're coming on, please make sure you jump in the chat. Let me know that you're on. Say hello, if you can, just so I know that you're out there. Don't forget, please go to the North Philly Project Facebook page. You'll be able to see this stream and be able to send it out, these conversations, and also our YouTube channel, North Philly Project. So as we talk about community, so much of our conversation now is about the violence in community, as it should be. We're in crisis state. There's a siege upon peace in our communities. When I talk with people, and I'm talking with people throughout the country who are from Philadelphia, not just people in Philly, but people who are from Philly, who are staying connected through the news or through family. So many people talk about the violence in such a way unique conversation in December. I was in Philadelphia. We did an event for Mr. Barnes down at Cecil B. Moore, and it was, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 of us. And the reality of it is, and I'm not over exaggerating here. I'm not exaggerating here. Most of the conversations either began with or in some way morphed into conversation about safety in the streets, what the streets look like, the unsafeness, the violence, the crime, and the accelerated numbers, right? That they're moving, not just gathering how many, just how quickly. You turn on the news and you go outside, and by the time you've looked at one, there's another, and by the time you've resolved one, there's another. It is dominating who we are in conversation. However, as much as there is a reality for us, excuse me for a second. Love to hydrate. As much as there is a reality for us about safety, about crime, we have another reality. And that reality is that crime, from a news perspective, from a political perspective, is also being used as a smokescreen to hide some of the other issues that are not being addressed. Some of those issues have a root. They have a cause, which creates what? An effect. And I think that it's important for us to really dig in and to have conversation, authentic conversation as a community. This does not dismiss at all, ever, what is happening with our community concerning crime, concerning the violence, concerning the loss of life at such a accelerated rate, at such a high rate, such an enormous rate, and the toll that it's taken on families, the stressors that it creates, the trauma that, the numbness. I was watching a video the other night, an interview with a young man from Zoo Gang, from down Diamond Street. And the young brother was talking about the numbness that his generation feels. Oh, another one shot? Come on, let's go play some ball. Let's go get a blunt. Let's go to the movies. Another one? That there's a numbness now because it's such a norm. Yeah, I get that. And we cannot pretend like that's not happening. But there's some other realities out there. And these aren't alternative reality states. This goes along. These are intercourse. They're connected. And that is another reality, that one of the reasons that our situation with crime, the violent crime, dominates so much is because it's also being used not to solve the issues, but to hide other issues. And I want to be real about that. And there are those who will disagree with me. I've had conversations with people because crime is such, violent crime is such a driver of our conversation and our news. But we got to do some digging. We have to, at this point, we got to, and I don't like to speak in overgeneralizations, but I'm gonna go back on my own philosophy tonight. And we have to start looking beyond. We got to start digging into and understanding what the real play is on the hand that's being dealt. We cannot dismiss what is happening on our streets, in our homes. But we also must look at the larger picture that it's connected to. I want to talk tonight about the why behind the what. If we're going to truly help community, rebuild community, reboot community, help our community heal, be a part of the solution, be the change that we want to see, all of those wonderful things, if it's going to happen, I am one to say that we really must understand our why behind the what. We really must understand what is truly happening. We can't fix something that we can't see. We can't fix something that we really don't understand. We'll keep putting band-aids on things that need surgery. We'll put an ice pack on a broken leg. That's not going to do any good. That leg needs to mend. And it's going to hurt in fixing it so that it can mend. But that pain to correct that brokenness is necessary. For us as a community, we historically have put band-aids on so many issues that need real surgery. Now I'm talking about those long surgeries like, organ transplant surgery. I'm talking about those long, intricate surgeries, those detailed surgeries, those surgeries that demand that a specialist who's experienced and understands and knows and has done this before. That's who we want with the scalpel. That's who we want to lead the team. And the reality for us is, and you'll hear me use that word a lot, reality, because some of this stuff is just not real. The reality of it is we've put so many band-aids. You know what happens after a while with band-aids, don't you? They get stuck even after the healing happens, or they peel off. We are watching flat tires be repaired with plugs for so long. That's our community. That's my analogy. For so long, we don't even realize there's a bigger hole there. Our community needs surgery. And if we are really going to heal, if we're really going to see change in our lifetime and to create a community or give our next generation what they need to build, if that is going to happen, and that's my prayer, that's what I seek after, that's what Aaron Wells lives for. I love us. I love us. I love my North Philly. I love the people there. I love us. But my heart yearns for change. It's broken, and my heart cries because of what we continually go through generation after generation after generation. At some point in time, my mother, dear Mary Wells, who is no longer with us physically, my mother once told me, listen, when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you got to do is stop digging. Our community has got to stop digging. And we have to wait and look where we are and climb out of this hole and begin to build. And in order for us to do that, we must perform surgery. That means that some, and forgive my language, I got a chance to stop it, but some of this shit has just got to stop. We've got to get rid of some of this stuff, y'all. We got to blow this thing up. In order for change to really happen, and in order for change to truly happen, we've got to stop digging, and we have to realize this thing ain't working. It simply isn't working. So I'm going to share some of that. I want to say hello to my people Hakeem. He's on tonight. He tapped in. Hakeem says he totally agrees. We have to find a way to come together as a people of color and build again, and started with love. I'm with you on that, Hakeem, 100%. This is where we are. So I want to talk about that tonight. I want to talk about the why behind the what. I've spent a lot of time with this. I'm not what I would consider an expert, but I'm a person with lived experience. I'm not an expert, but I spend my time studying North Philadelphia, and I've been doing it since I was a little boy, and I'm 63. I love my town. I love my city, but I love my North Philly. And what I want to be able to share tonight is, and this is important, and I was talking with a friend prior to this, who's in Atlanta, and this is what we talked about. You can call it Philly, you can call it Detroit, you can call it Tucson, Arizona, you can call it Oakland, California, you can call it Ocala, Florida. In our urban areas where we are predominantly people of color and predominantly Black, we got the same issues. Chi-Town, same issues. And so collectively, we have this opportunity to have real discussion about real solutions that will create change and take these band-aids off and really do some surgery. But dig this, it's going to hurt because change can be painful. But we've been doing this thing for so long. We got to get off this hamster wheel. Dig, I used to do this workshop in church, and I used to do these workshops, and these workshops were called 25 Ways to Ride a Dead Horse. And it's just interesting, right? We're just looking at these different ways you ride a dead horse. You put a new saddle on the horse, or you prop the horse up and put wheels on the horse, or you jump from a fence on the horse. The reality is that after you go through the 25, you realize number 26 is you got to get a new horse because the horse is dead. No matter how you try to ride this horse is dead. We got to make some changes for sustained prosperity, changes for sustained wellness, for sustained healing. And in order for that to happen, we got to stop digging and make a decision that this ain't working and do something different. So what I'd like to talk about, and all I'm doing is I'm setting the table. Our panels will come back. I'll be having people from community. We'll be chopping it up, hoping that you'll be sharing this or on your social media platforms or coming on with me every Monday night at 7:00, Wellness Chronicles, and be a part of the conversation through chat. We would love for you to share this on your social media platform so others can hear it, others can participate and be a part of it. Go to our YouTube channel to watch some of these discussions. So next week I'll have a panel. We'll be talking about quite a few issues. I just wanted to set the table for moving forward. My time with you, your time with me. All right. Community, we got to get our rhythm back. We have to, or we're going to lose. And we're at the win or lose stage. And right now we're taking an L. We're taking an L, but it doesn't have to stay that way. I am so optimistic where others are so pessimistic about community or so negative about community. And it's not like I'm a realist. If anybody know, I'm real about this thing. I know what I see. I know what I experience, but I also know what's inside of me. And I know that the potential of our community has never dissipated. It's still there. As a matter of fact, it's even greater now because this generation that is coming behind us, man, they might need somebody to help them interpret what's going on for them, but they're warriors. Their attitude, if we can get in and help them with their voice and help them interpret. We got some world changers there, but they need us. And as Akeem just said, we've got to do this together. We have to get our rhythm back. We out of rhythm, and we are people that is rhythmic. Yo, what say, huh? We are a people who are rhythmic, and we have to get our rhythm of success, our rhythm of honor, our rhythm of righteousness, our rhythm of prosperity. We've got to get our rhythm back, and we're out of rhythm. And so what I want to talk about tonight, and again, laying the groundwork, over the next few weeks, I'm going to talk about 10 crucial issues that I believe must be addressed in community for us to get our rhythm back. 10 crucial issues that we have to address. We've got to talk about. We've got to be able to discuss these with intelligence, with passion, but with intelligence, with insight. Being able to bring solutions that work for us all. We have to find a mutual starting point. We're not a monolith. We're not all the same. We're tall. We're short. We're heavy. We're slim. We're light. We're dark. We're gray hair. We're young. We're old. We bring so much to the table, but we're out of rhythm. Even an orchestra, any orchestra has all of these different musicians, all of these different instruments. And if they all played at the same time and what they wanted to play, it would sound like a mess. But some of the greatest music we've ever had is when in unison, and that conductor is conducting it. The flute is coming in with the trumpet, and the trumpet is coming in with the harp, and it's complementing the piano. And so we have this beautiful sound that has come together and has found this mutual piece of music that I bring the best of me, and I'm in rhythm with you, and you bring the best of you, and you're in rhythm with him, and he's in rhythm with her, and she's in rhythm with, and so we as a community have to be like that, and we've got to get our rhythm back. So I want to talk about 10 things that help us get our rhythm back. But these are issues that if we don't address these things, we'll be walking around with Band-Aids on broken legs. I love us. And so I'm taking the time tonight that anybody that wants to hang out, that you'll hear. If you're there, please check in. Just go to the chat. Let me know you're there. If you have any questions, you got a comment, jump in. We're going to get down for a little bit, okay? So these are the 10 things. And I'm starting with number 1. We'll do number 2 next week. I was going to list them 1 through 10 and then be able to go into, but I wanted to start with number 1. Because I am a believer that number 1, what I'm about to give you, is something that when we see our stories of violence, which are real, and when we see our stories of the murder and the mayhem that's happening on our streets, that these things, though real and need to be addressed, are also being used by media, by government, being used to hide the other things that we also need to be talking about. Because listen to this. If your arm is broke, but you have a nail in your foot, what can happen from that nail in your foot could kill you quicker than your arm being broke. Both painful, but one could actually take you out, right? And so we're only focused on this and not focused on that, right? That is killing us when all we're seeing is that bone sticking out of the arm. We're not realizing that that dirty nail in the foot is getting in our bloodstream, and it's not doing us any good. Tea time, gang. So I want to talk about these 10 crucial issues over the next few weeks. My panels are going to be on here. You're going to be loving the variety and the diversity of voices, the topics that we'll be talking about. But these are the 10 things. This is number 1. The studies show it. I've got some evidence. We'll talk about it over the next couple of minutes, but I need you to hear this. This is number 1. The number 1 issue that has to be addressed in the community, North Philly specifically for me, the 19132, but as a whole, in all urban communities, but in Philadelphia specifically, Wellness Chronicles is coming to you from North Philly Project. This is about my North Philly. The number 1 issue is this. Most of Philadelphia lives in poverty. And that should read is living in poverty. Most of Philly lives in poverty. I've got the numbers to prove it. Patsy, how you doing? I'm glad you're on. That's my bud. That's my people. Yeah, we got to get our rhythm back. And one of the things we have to understand is the issue of poverty in Philadelphia. I got some stuff to share with you. I got some numbers to share with you. They're not pretty. They ain't pretty at all. But because we can't actually hear them and see them, right? Because they're covered and saturated with the news of the violence versus the why behind the what. How do we get here? How are we here? Well, Aaron's gonna hang out with you tonight and talk about that. Here's some of the issues that go with the issue, the number 1 issue of our poverty in North Philadelphia. The racial and ethnic disparities, they continue to persist. They're not decreasing. They're either staying steady or they're rising. There are 3 publications. They're like Bibles to me. They're my Bibles of community support. The first is the Pew Charitable Trust State of the City. Every year, the Pew Charitable Trust comes out with a State of the City of Philadelphia. every year. And they talk about issues of education, employment, all of the demographics, all of the hot button topics. And they have a whole section on poverty. Now, this is researched every year. But then along with that, the Bible says, or talks to us about that we compare these things. And I add to this the CHOP community assessment. So the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia also does an assessment of community, looking at the same demographics, looking at the same issues, looking at the same topics. So we got the Pew Charitable Trust, we have the CHOP community assessment, and then we have the Growing Up in Philly. This is from the Department of Public Health, from the city of Philadelphia itself, the health and well-being of Philadelphia's children. It specifically looks at children, but life in general in Philadelphia. It breaks things down as far as gender, as far as socioeconomic categories. It breaks it down into areas of the city. And so with this, I want you to know that the things I'm sharing with you are not just things that Aaron's coming up with. These are not just things that Aaron's thinking off the top of his head. This is research stuff that's out there for you and I to see. And these are some of the things that we're not hearing, because all we're hearing about is the violence on the streets. But what we're not hearing about are the other things that, even if the violence went away today, if all things were settled and solved on all of the street beefs and the gangs, and we took all the guns off the street, we would still be, out of the top 10 cities in the country, the poorest. That's according to Pew Charitable Trust. Yeah. Out of the top 10 cities in the United States, and we're the 6th largest city in the United States, out of the top 10, Philadelphia is the poorest. Now, here's the deal. You ready for this? Half of the poor, half of the number of people living below the poverty line in Philadelphia, which is the poorest of the 10 largest cities, are Black. That's a hard piece of bread to crunch on, bro. Hey, look, understand what I'm saying. So out of the 10 largest cities in the country, our city is the 6th largest in the country. Out of the 10, that group of 10, so it's us plus 9 more, we're number 6. Economically, we are the poorest. So we have some zip codes in both West and North Philadelphia that are the poorest of the poorest city of the top 10. Poverty ain't no joke. But who's talking about it? I don't hear it. All I hear about is who killing who. I'm not hearing about poverty. And so if I'm not hearing about poverty, I'm not hearing how poverty is a part of what we're seeing from the violence. If we're not talking about poverty, then we're not talking about why we have the health disparities, which is connected to the poverty. If we're not talking about poverty, then we're not understanding how to fix the education system, which is horrendous. And those numbers we'll be talking about in a couple of weeks when we're specifically talking about education, but it's connected to poverty. So if poverty is not addressed, how do we win? How do we ever win if we don't address poverty? Racial ethnic disparities continue to persist. That means they don't go away. They don't go away. They're not going away. And they're not going away because they're not being addressed. 1 out of 3 children live in poverty. And 50% live in single parent households. So that's the connection. That's not beating up single parent households. And those single parents may be male, maybe female, maybe man, maybe woman. But there's a connection between, and watch this. This is not the issue of morality of people living it. And we ain't doing, that's not the instrument we're playing. But it's about income. It's about income. So if I'm living in poverty, but I only have one income, and if I'm making, let's say, minimum wage, and I've got 2 children, it's some issues there. 1 out of 3. You ready for this? So is you, your brother, your sister. 1, 2, 3. It says one out of these three lives in poverty. So that's the person, this address, this address, this address, one out of the three. That's the consistent, and that is not going away. It persists. It's there. This is a truth in our community. Akeem says, also think that as people of color, we've lost our way. Some of us are still sleeping. Some of us are conscious. If we go back to the roots to find out who we are and where we come from, and where we come from and where we're headed, that would be a great foundation for us all. Akeem, I'm with you. I'm rolling with you. If you're on, jump in the comments. Even as you share this later on, you can still comment. I'll go back and check those, and we'll respond to you. So this is some of the why behind the what. And if we're going to get our rhythm back, we've got to address poverty in our city. So dig this. More than 80% of childhood deaths. Sometimes it's hard to read these things. More than 80%, that's 8 out of 10, of childhood deaths in Philly come from Black and Hispanic households, people of color. The same people that are falling through the gaps in the education system. The same people who are the first fired and the last hired. The same people. Is it a accident that these are the faces that you see on the news? It's not an accident. It all goes together. It says here that the distribution of poverty among children in Philadelphia is concentrated among racial and ethnic minorities. You want to find out where most of the poor people are? Look for Black or brown. Well, I know some white people that they ain't doing too well. They living in poverty. Absolutely. And poverty is poverty. But that's not the point that I'm making. And when we love all. When we give to all. And this is if we can fix the problem for the least of these, so to speak, if we can fix the problem for the marginalized, if we can actually make some change, we can set and develop a template that all people who are living in, experiencing poverty could build out. But let's be honest about this. 50% are Black. 50, that's one half. You tear a dollar in half, give me 50 cents, you take 50 cents. Your 50 is in poverty. The distribution of poverty among children in Philadelphia is concentrated among racial and ethnic minorities. 50% of Hispanic children and 38% of Black children live in poverty. Those numbers are too high. This is 2022. This is 2022. We have televisions. We have televisions that we call smart TVs. We have cars that can drive with no driver. And we still have people living in poverty? No. If we're going to get our rhythm back, we gotta get rid of some stuff. We gotta blow some stuff up. We gotta do some things different. I'm just setting the table, because we're going to have discussions over the next few weeks about how to truly, really get this rhythm back. But first, we got to understand the why behind the what. So as we're doing this, when you're watching the news tonight and all you're seeing are the murders and the mayhem, I want you to be able to say, I wonder why. We got to get those guns off the street. Yes. We got to hold parents accountable. Absolutely. We have to be able to lock them all up. Brakes. How about we need to be able to address the trauma of poverty? And let's just explore the possibility that when I'm living in poverty, that it shows itself out in frustration. It shows itself out in despair, it shows itself out in such a way. And I can't speak for all and won't. But what I can do to say is there is a connection between all of the negative social ills and demographics that we experience and generational poverty. The distribution of poverty among children of Philadelphia is concentrated among racial and ethnic minorities. That's something to take home and see if we can get a little understanding about that. Money. I know my church folk want to talk about money being the root of all evil, but it's hard for it to be the root of evil when you ain't got none. It's hard to watch taxes go up and you don't have money to pay for what you have what you need right now. This is an amazing piece. And I just want to share the why behind the what so we can set the table for conversations moving forward. The number one issue that must be addressed if we're going to get our rhythm back as a community, the number one issue has to be the fact that many of us, are living in poverty. So let's keep flowing a little bit. Housing cost. Wow. So I need a home. I need an apartment. I need a place to stay. My children need a place to stay. Need a roof over my head. Need to get out of the elements. I need a place to live. That is not something that people should have to burden over. That's something that should be available. Even watching people being priced out of homes. What's happening to those people who couldn't afford or barely could afford where they lived? And now with gentrification, we're pricing people out. We're moving people out. What happens to them now? Half of the households in community, we're talking about Philly, specifically from North Philadelphia, are experiencing housing cost burden. You know what a burden is, right? Something heavy that's uncomfortable. 49.5%. Now you got to remember, half of the people in poverty in Philadelphia are Black. So if half of the households in community, 49.5, are experiencing this housing burden, that means that many Black people in community are experiencing these things. And there's a result that comes from that. Just watch the 6 o'clock news. There are results that come from that. And so it's important for us to be able to address and to see what's happening in community for real, that the narrative is something that nobody else said. So if that's the case, I'm gonna have to dig through, because brothers and sisters, we gotta understand in 2022, we can't believe all that spending we see on TV. All of those stories have an agenda. You've got to do some digging in and be able to look and find out what the why is behind the what. The what is what we see. The why is how do we get here? I don't know about you, but it's tough because I was there. I experienced homelessness for a while when I lived in California, way back when I was trying to find myself as a young man. Truth be told, sometimes when I was in college in Baltimore, just bad decisions and choices on my behalf. But I know what it's like. I've worked with people experiencing homelessness for, about 30 years now. And I understand that there's no this is the one thing that's happening. What I do know is there's no one reason. Everybody's situation is different. But what I do know is that the stress and the trauma from not knowing where you're going to lay your head, the safety and security that comes from having your own place, guess what? Half of our population in our community, experience the cost and the burden of owning a home, of being in a place. Not just owning a home, being in a place. How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to keep my lights on? How am I going to keep food in here? What about utilities? What about repairs? That's a tough chore every day of your life, to have to deal with that lack of security. That's a trauma and a stress upon itself. Could you imagine as a child watching your parent, your provider, the one who is that creates substance for you and sustains this person that you depend on every day to watch their stress and how they live out their stress simply because they're worried that me and you might be on the street tomorrow. It's got to be tough. And so as we're talking about our issues in community, we got to dig past what they're just showing us and dig into what it really is. Important piece here. And again, this is no condemnation on anyone from a single family, single parent household. This is just giving facts and figures about why we are stressed from an economic standpoint. Here's one of the determinants, that 58% is the average. The 58% average in Philadelphia is twice the national average. And so much of that has to do with and lend itself to the issue of poverty in our communities. How do we now address? How do we help? How do we support what is out there that we can now be able to say, you know what, this is really an issue, and this one is tied into this one. And that's the piece that we've got to be able to do. We got to start connecting dots, y'all. We just can't allow people to give us these stories and then we run with it like, yup, they said it, so that's the problem. No. We've got to be able to dig in. If we're going to find the solutions that are going to sustain us as a community, that's going to help us heal, help us be well and find the wellness that we all deserve, we got to do due diligence to find out what's really going on, the why behind the what. The 58% average in Philadelphia of single parent households. And again, that's not just single mothers, that could be single fathers. And in many cases, as we know, right, grandparents, right? As we know the dynamic and this dynamic in our community, right, of grandparents raising children, 2 generations down, the 58% average is higher, twice as high as the national average. These are some things for us to think about. We're going to be talking about a lot of these over the next few weeks. Make sure you're sharing these on your social media platform. Let's get other people involved in these conversations. We can start looking at the why behind the what, so we really can support community and help community grow, be well, be a part of. In Philadelphia, we surpassed the national average for food stamps. Yeah. Subsidized by the government subsidy, government support. There's not a lot of freedom in that. And oftentimes we don't understand the connection between these numbers and poverty, because in reality, they're an indicator of the presence. They're an indicator of the presence of being stressed from an economic standpoint. The WIC recipients in Philly are at 51.3% compared to 34.1% throughout the rest of the state. So you have the rest of the state at 34 as an average. In the Pittsburgh area, their numbers are real comparable to ours. Reasons why, right? And so, but here, again, we don't understand and see at times, can't speak for everybody, but many times we don't see the connection of how these things are subsidized by government, which is an indication that I can't afford it. So now I come to you for help. Great that the help is there, but what is the solution to bring me out of poverty? Because in some cases, it's just adding to the dynamic of poverty. In some cases, all I'm doing is, you ready for this again? I know you've heard it before. I'm just putting a Band-Aid on something that's inevitable. You remove these benefits that come through government, whether it's food stamps or WIC or some of the other programs that are available. You remove those. Wow, you're going to really see these numbers go up because we're removing the Band-Aid. I'm not advocating they be moved. I'm just giving us information so that we can have really good conversation moving forward. Got another one for you. This is going to be an entire couple of weeks when we get on this one, because it's going to be number 2 or 3. The public education system reflects the conditions of poverty in the city. I want to say it's obvious, but it's not. There are people, well-intended, who are defenders of the public school system. I'm a product of the public school system. I am blessed that at the period of time that I went to school, my mother worked at the public school system. My sister for a while. My cousin Arvell, God bless her, rest her soul. Arvell was a principal. We all came from North Philly. We were all involved in the school system. This is not me being nostalgic. This is me being real. There was a difference. I go back to teachers like Mr. Abdullah. He was a brother, and he came in and he started teaching us about Shaka Zulu. He started teaching us about the beauty of the continent of Africa. He started teaching us about the beauty of self. I had teachers who taught us about honor, that it went beyond the curriculum, but it was stressed. And I came from a different era where homework was taken home and done before you did other things. But let's now fast forward, I don't know, a whole bunch of years. When we look at the numbers of Black young men in public schools, but the lack of Black teachers, male, when we look at the disparity and the gaps that existed before COVID, where this school has hand-me-down books, this school has new books, this school has hand-me-down tablets or computers, this school has new computers and tablets, this schoolyard is dilapidated and destroyed, and this one is manicured. And you get the picture, right? You can look at the public school system and tell whether this school and this community is stressed from an economic standpoint, whether this is a poverty-stricken area, or you can look at this school and see a thriving economic. You can look at the education system and tell where you're at. Mm-hmm. But if all I'm watching on TV is that schools are unsafe, I'm not realizing that young Black and brown children are still learning about doggone Romeo and Juliet. What? What in the world does that have to do with the world that I'm stepping into? We're not prepared for the world that we live in, not the reality of it. The public education system reflects all conditions of poverty in our city. And I would venture to say in most cities, only 31% of the city's fourth graders, sit down if you're standing up for this one. When I got this number, honestly, I'm surprised by many things, but I'm shocked by nothing. I grew up in North Philly. I've seen it all. This one, borderline. Only 31% of the city's fourth graders scored proficient or above on tests in reading in 2018. So that's 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22. So they're in 8th grade now. Think they're reading better? Think they're reading better? Think the school system hasn't changed, has improved in those 4 years? You think that by them going from 4th grade now in 8th grade, do you really think? And don't forget, we got 2 years of COVID and 1 year when it was virtual, and many of our families and children weren't prepared for that. North Philly Project started a initiative, I don't want to call it a program, an initiative during COVID called Close the Gap. Because once we saw the disparity in the haves and the have-nots, and that these communities that we're talking about did not have and weren't prepared for the shift from in-person to virtual, we created a program along with many others. We created a program to help close that gap. Guess what? The gap exists before COVID got here. And so when we're looking at 8th graders on the street, 9th graders on the street, living as they're living and creating some of the mayhem that we're seeing, please remember they were 4th graders, and only 31% of those young men and women scored proficient or above on their test of reading. That was what, in 2018, this is 22. These numbers connect. What you see on TV, the what, there's a why behind it. And I just gave you one of them. Let's keep flowing because we're going to put the plane in the hangar soon, but I got a couple more things to show you. And remember, we're just setting the table so that we can have real good conversation over the next the next couple of weeks. I hope you join us over the next couple of weeks. We're really digging into what's happening in community and how we can bring wellness and healing to our community. One of the people that was part of the assessment for Children's Hospital made this statement. Education is really a serious health issue. That's strong. Because if someone is in poverty, they will stay in poverty forever without education, without access to a good education system. That's a strong statement. That's from somebody boots on the ground. That's a person who's lived it. That's a person who's with a bird's eye view. This isn't something that someone studied in school and came up with some numbers. This is somebody who said, I'm seeing this. And I got to say, I can chime in and I'm going to concur. I'm going to give it an amen. I'm going to say, yup, because this is so accurate for us. My people, if we don't understand what this why is behind this what, we will keep putting Band-Aids in and we'll keep fighting fights that we can't win because we haven't fought the fight that's going to give us victory. There's some things that's got to change. And it's not going to change if we don't change it. Here's another quote. Poor living environment, low education, and low income all lead to poor health. It is a multi-generation problem. Yeah. It is tough. It is tough to be able to come from something, environment, household, culture, that hasn't prepared me not to be a person who lives in poverty. It is tough to come from some place that doesn't prepare me not to be the inevitable. I'm gonna go back to one of my earlier statements when we talk about nostalgic view of the past. There really were some things in place that is not our norm now. Not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying that things have changed because community has changed. Family has changed. There was something to eating together at the table. There was something to turning off the TV until your homework was done. There was something to a work ethic. Make sure that your chores are done before you. But then there were some things missing too, and we didn't just get here. We have some gaps we got to fill. There's a bridge from the things that worked to the things that's going on. We cannot, and I'm going to close and put this plane in the hanger. We cannot throw the baby away with the bathwater. Does things have to change? Without a doubt. Do we need to tear this thing down and start it all over again? Yeah, but it's how we do that. Here's how I'm going to end tonight. If you grew up in that nostalgic past in community that we miss so fondly, make yourself available. Be the change you want to see. Corny, I know you hear it all the time, but be the change you want to see. But also, be open to learn and to understand because things are different and it doesn't make things wrong. Because our generations after us see things different, do things different, that doesn't make it wrong. It makes it theirs. And maybe if we spent some time understanding, because in all you're getting, get understanding. And communication does not happen until understanding takes place. I alluded to a video I saw this week. I posted on my Facebook page. A young brother was talking about what's happening on the streets. It's raw, so if you don't like profanity, don't listen to it. Don't bother me. I live in a profane world, so I'm good. And he was talking about the fact that there's no connection between the past and that we live in a fear of who we are. And when I say who we are, we live in a fear of our people, our young people. Man, I can't fear none that look like me. Got to be wise. It's some days not safe out there, right? But I'm not afraid of me. The point that I'm making is that's us. That's us all over again. They're just doing it different. They're saying it different. The old heads I grew up with, you forgot, we used to gang war. Y'all used to chase me. You didn't have automatic assault weapons, but you had 38s and 45s, and you raised hell. And people back then said the same thing about you that they're saying about them. So don't pretend. No, these are your grandchildren, your great grandchildren. There's a connection. Our young folks didn't just get here. Their parents didn't just get here. Their parents didn't just get here. And when you look past their parents, that's us. We're connected. And so we have to find out how to connect because we're connected. We have to figure out how to be who we already are. Community don't look the same, but it doesn't mean that we can't take the best of what we knew and to present it as an offering to community as is now. But just like we need others to understand, we have to understand. This thing ain't easy, y'all. It's kind of deep. But for real, it ain't that deep. Like Akeem said, it has a lot of love to do with it. A lot of love involved, a lot of communication involved. And we can't be afraid. And what we're getting on our 6 o'clock news and our 11 o'clock news and all on our streams and all on our phones is fear. And we're being taught and conditioned to fear ourselves. If it's going to change, we have to understand that when you dig through it all and peel those layers back, the trauma of poverty is the true driver of everything that you're seeing. We have to help bring the best of what we know and put it in the hands and equip this generation if we're going to help them overcome, if we're going to help them dig out and build. I think it's doable. I think that we can make this happen, but it's going to take all of us. It's going to take every single one of us. Alone we can go quickly, but together we can go far. A couple of comments, and then we're going to put the plane in the hangar. Patsy chimed in about the numbers way too high, but they're not reported. Absolutely right. Akeem chimes in. One of the main reasons for poverty is a lack of knowledge and the secret societies. Yeah, those things that are hidden from us. My people. Hey, Darlena Graves. Oh man, that's we go back like rocking chairs. Good to see you. Thanks for joining in. She says, I get that. The news is a one-way street, always negative toward us. Absolutely. And so we'll be talking about this over the next couple of weeks. We're going to talk about the media and our community, our need for our own media. One of the reasons why we're going virtual with North Philly Project, just to give the people who need to have a voice, that do have a voice, a vehicle to use that voice. So it's that time. I try to be faithful with the time. We're going to put the plane in the hangar for the night. Please join us next week, 7 o'clock, Wellness Chronicles. We're going to still be talking about our community. We'll be looking for solutions to issues, right? Community conversations, exploring life in marginalized communities. That would be ours. But it's not going to stay that way. I'm a firm believer in that. And we're going to talk about how we can ignite, launch, propel ourselves into sustainable social change. I'm an optimist, gang of mine. I believe it's doable, but it's going to take all hands on deck. Let's figure it out together. And let's not just criticize our young folks out there. Let's see what we can do to be able to support them. And that begins by seeing them and hearing them and being able to love them where they are and understand that all they are is us all over again. We'll talk about all this. Thanks for joining me tonight, letting me flow a little bit. Panel's going to be good next week. A lot of good conversation. Make sure you check in. Share this on your social media. Let others know about the conversation. Let them know it's 7 o'clock on Mondays. Aaron is here. North Philly Project, Wellness Chronicles. Okay? I love you. Have a great rest of the week. Stay safe. COVID is real. Heat is real. But we're real. And we're going to do the damn thing. I love you. Bye-bye.